We have our guest with us.
Oh,
Hello.
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 What's happening? Now, you look familiar.
Yes, good to see you again.
What, from, do you just wander around all the grocery stores? Is that what you do?
I know.
Actually, yeah, my dad told me the best way to find a partner in life is at the grocery store. You know, you
Well,
walk in there, you see what they're eating, what are you eating, you know, you're on the same page. He said that was his advice on how to meet people. So,
I like that. Plus, if they cook, it's nice to have a partner that
Mm.
cooks, right?
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
okay, so you and Catherine explain how we met.
So we were just walking in the grocery store, and something came up about Florida being cold, and it was like a brisk, 65 degrees.
There
And
you
I said,
go.
"Yeah, it's cold, but at least it's warm compared to Minnesota. Minnesota was freezing." And then you said, "What part of Minnesota?" And I said, "Minnetonka, Lake Minnetonka." So we were
Right
just
over where
aligned,
we
and
live. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
just neighbors, over 1,000 miles away from home and
Yep.
connecting. So
Bump into each other at the grocery store.
yeah,
So then we got talking,
yeah. We got
and
talking about mamamimi.com. I have a sign language YouTube channel for nonverbal autistic kids and other sorts of
Wonderful.
neurodivergent individuals to try to teach an alternative methods of communication, and also to work in the behavioral therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy techniques that I'm learning with my own son. Um, and basically, I have a special needs son who I couldn't get to pay attention to me. And although
Yeah.
I have a degree in sign language, I couldn't teach him sign language. I always thought, oh, I'm going to have a baby. They're going to learn baby sign language. This is going to be great, And he's nearly 4 years old, and we don't even have a high five. And so I've been getting him early intervention for a really long time, but it was a combination of putting me in TV so he could watch me explain to him things,
Mm.
Yep.
and we could kind of
oh, that's
connect, because
interesting.
something about the screen, it's not overstimulating. Kids love iPads. Doesn't matter what you got going on, you love watching stuff. So uh, and then with all this early intervention, now he's got 40 words and he's saying some
Aw.
sentences, and it's a lot less fighting, a lot less stress of him not being able to say what he wants and just screaming. My ears have finally had a break, and it's good to hear your voice.
Well, that's very nice.
I have a question about that. So, um, your son is 4, so obviously he's not old enough. Really, I mean, he could go to ECFE or whatever. But have the school systems been any help to you?
Yes. So actually, in Florida, we got the Step Up Scholarship for students with unique abilities. And he was in the Early Steps program, which gives you an IFSP. It's not an IEP. It's eligible for all kids, whether your kid is autistic or even just delayed. If your kid has any sort of delay, the early steps program in Florida and in other states, there's different type of early intervention programs that are free for families, and they kind of trained me on how to interact with him, how to try to set his schedules, what kind of help to get. And now that he's 3, I got him the Florida Step Up Scholarship for students with unique abilities, where they basically give about $10,500 to any parent who's homeschooling their kids from age 3 and up.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And you can do that without an IEP and without public school. However, they do a matrix score. And the matrix score, I think my son needs more help, just, out of pocket. His therapies are about 2,000, 2,200 a month. Yeah.
Whoa.
But you'll pay anything to make your kid
Yeah.
talk and to
Yep.
Right.
communicate
Yep.
and be independent. So the goal with Mama Mimi is to make it more affordable. I don't think these therapists are going to lose their jobs. The problem is there's so many kids who are in need, and there's not enough staff. Not everybody
Yeah.
can get the individualized help. So I'm going through the school system to get an IEP, because once I have that IEP, then they can hopefully increase his matrix score, because they provide up to around $36,000 a school year. And you can play with therapists, you can buy school supplies, things from, the Lakeshore store, and educational products. There's also softwares. I got my son an iPad, which I'm actually building an iPad app, an AAC device.
Oh, that's nice.
Because with his level of severity, autism, that the speech apps that the therapist gave us and the one that was covered by insurance, well, he was so severe he couldn't even use it. And so now we've created an app that is really super easy to use, and it's in the beta mode right now. So there's a lot of good things rolling out. And I went to the School for the Deaf, Gallaudet University in Washington.
Yeah.
So I went about 2 years where I didn't talk, and I had roommates who were deaf and blind, and we had to do tactile interpreting to communicate, kind of like Helen Keller, where you sign into their hands and you kind of feel the language.
Oh, yeah.
The interesting thing about tactile interpreting and communication is it's a communication you feel. So I believe it's still processed like language in that part of the brain, but you're also using your muscles and your muscle memory. So sometimes when I'm thinking in sign language, my wrists and my arms will feel fatigued, because in my head I'm moving when I'm not actually moving. So I started grabbing my son's hands and doing the shapes, because he wouldn't look at me to learn sign language. So I would tactilely manipulate his hands, hand over hand, and I put myself in a YouTube video. And when I started out, everyone said, well, Mimi, who are you? Your kid can't even talk. Why are you going to go out there and be a neurodivergent leader and help all these people when you can't even communicate with your son? Well, guess what? I started this thing. It was about 2.5 years ago. I put my first video, but I really got, knee deep into it last May or April. And since June, my son went from just only a high five to over 40 words in sign language. He started babbling and at least vocalizing instead of being like radio silent. And he said his first sentence ever this week, which was, I want ice cream. And that's because we went to the grocery store and we bought a bunch of ice cream.
Wait, that's when we saw you. He was wanting a certain kind of ice cream.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I mean, how did we start talking? It was at a great.
She said it was because you guys talked about the weather, and then she said at least.
Well, I mean, but we were just walking by each other in the aisle, and just kind of engaged. And it turns out I had no idea you lived in Minnesota. You had no idea I lived in Minnesota. It was a very nice talk. And then all of a sudden, everybody got involved, and you realize what a very special moment that was. It was wonderful.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's the wonderful thing about what I'm doing right now as
Yep.
a neurodivergent leader, is helping people, because this is something that doesn't end for parents. Once you have a special needs kid, you kind of you're always dealing with, how can I help them, right? And as a community, if we pool together resources and we connect and relate and empathize, I think it's going to benefit the good of all children.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll find out where they fit. What can they do? It's a very sad life for a kid to not have any words, be sitting isolated alone with a computer the whole day. Parents want to go out, and like my son likes to lay down in the crosswalk, and I'm like, dude,
He does.
crossing the street, please. And it's oppositional defiance. So anything you say, he just wants to do the opposite. And it's a neurological thing, it's an extreme type of stubbornness, but it's curable with therapy. It's not like autism. It comes with autism, but there's a cure, there's a process with behavioral therapy. And I had no clue what behavioral therapy was, even though I went to the School for the Deaf, and I worked in Palm Beach County schools. I worked in Miami-Dade schools. I worked in Orange and Seminole County up in Orlando, and interpreted in a lot of these special needs class. And I've never seen it, but this behavioral therapist found me with my son, laying down having a mental breakdown that was worse than most toddlers. And she's like, hey, I think you need therapy, and I think you need to go get an autism diagnosis. And I was pretty sure he was autistic, but he's 2, like when
You're right.
you start doing stuff. So the earlier you get intervention and help, the easier it is to change behaviors, and but it's still never too late. And that's the thing I love about the computer is you can learn by copying. And although autistic kids don't copy very much, maybe if they're exposed to a video of something, 100 times, they will start copying, or at least understand the concept, hopefully.
We have a
Like,
listener who just put up on the chat, what's the name of the YouTube channel? My 13-year-old daughter is nonverbal and severely autistic. Would like to give this a try.
So the YouTube channel, that is so sweet.
It's very sweet.
It's youtube.com/@microschool, or if you search Mama Mimi's Micro School, it should come up. And so there's a lot of videos up there, and it's only going to grow. The content is going to grow as my son has more needs. I'm just going to plan on his whole education being on this YouTube channel and bringing experts and therapists and other parents who have stories to share. So on mamamimi.com, there's a Share Your Spark page where it's kind of like a community where people can share, like, hey, this is what I worked. This is a breakthrough. And the breakthrough with autism, it's kind of like cancer, where a lot of things kind of can cause it, make it worse, make it better. There's a lot of kids are being attacked by every angle these days, with the food, with the lifestyle, with all the chemicals in your soap and your shampoo and your cosmetics. So the goal with mamamimi.com is to take the thought out of healthy living for parents, because I've been into longevity for about 10 years now, and finding, healthy soaps, cleaning supplies, bamboo, linen, cotton, clothing, natural fibers that are breathable. I just want to make it easy for families to find what they need for their kids, because when you figure out your kid has autism, it's life-changing, not only for you as a parent, but for your kid. It requires a lot of extra work, and parents are strung out,
right.
It's really hard. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, we were talking about, Andy, the one in the yellow back there.
That'd be me.
Our son and our daughter.
He had behavioral issues in school.
No.
And, he was always highly intelligent, but his emotional regulation was always, and now he's got a son that's
Sounds familiar.
is pretty much the same way.
Yeah.
And Alex, who is sitting on the couch there, she's his sister. They're both our children. Mm-hmm. And she kind of had to deal with, it's kind of when there's siblings, and, you can't get anywhere without big meltdowns. And like you said, the oppositional defiance. It's like you can't ever just have an easy day. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Some days are better than others, but there's never just an easy, hop in the car, kids, and let's go. That just doesn't happen, because you have to worry about how long it takes them to transition and, just all this stuff. So it's not that it's such a huge learning curve for parents.
Yeah, it is. And it's hard because what I've realized with Mama Mimi is people who understand it jump on the bandwagon and they say, wow, this is great. We love it. But people who have never really been around an autistic person and they don't really understand it, I actually get some of like the meanest things that I've ever heard about, like, oh, you need to rein in your son, or like you can't, you're just a terrible parent, that's why your kid is acting like this, or whatever.
Wow, that's obnoxious.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, I know that's not a thing, but still sometimes at night you're just like bawling your eyes out crying, like, what am I doing wrong here as a parent? I'm trying so hard. My son, every time I say go to the car, he goes to the furthest point in the house. And if the back door is open, he is outside in the yard, and I'm like, why can't we just walk to the car?
Yeah.
But it's the transition, and and so I try to use reverse psychology, but the thing is, these kids are genius, and so reverse psychology with oppositional defiance doesn't really work,
No, because they're. I remember, I remember going through I was reading books and books and books on how to get your oppositional defiant, toddler to be more cooperative, and it was like bombard them with compliments. Tell them whenever they do something good that make sure you bombard them.
Yeah, and
And
they still
I'd
tell you to do that, by the
I
way.
know, and I'd be like, "Oh, Andy, it was so nice that you didn't drop food all over the floor. That you just ate your food. It was just so great to see you eat like a big boy or whatever." And it'd be like, "You would have to say these nice things to me because you're my mom." I'm
I
like,
mean,
"What?"
you didn't sell it very well from the sound of it.
I guess
it's
I didn't.
mom's fault.
I guess
yeah.
I didn't sell it well
Yeah,
enough.
last
Mom's
night
fault.
Ethan he didn't want to go to bed because he's sick. He's got a cold, and when he has colds, he usually has nightmares, and he was afraid to go to sleep because he didn't want to have a nightmare.
Yeah.
And Melissa went in there and talked like, you know what? I know for a fact when you go to sleep tonight, you're going to have good dreams.
Oh.
And Ethan goes, I think I won't.
You're wrong. Actually.
I think
Yeah,
I won't.
there's not a lot of fluff, and there's no
No.
BS. They're straight to the point, like blunt, and
Yeah.
that's also how the deaf community is. So sign language and deaf culture is also very blunt, and so yeah, it's interesting.
I guess it's hard to assign nuance, right?
Yeah.
It's the kind of the way the culture is, it's not like a beat around the bush type of like fluffy woohoo culture. You can be fluffy and beat around the bush in sign language. There's plenty of long, fancy, adjectives, but the deaf community is very straightforward, and that's the same thing with autism is they're smart. You can't just like lie and trick them or But one thing that you can do is like a choice board. So for example, with my son, I'm like, hey, do you want to go take a bath or take a shower? Either way, he's getting clean, but
Right.
like he feels like he's got the power and he's in control. So one of the things that's built into this Mama Mimi sign in, say with me app is choice boards that you can generate in real time, to immediately give your kids an option. So there's not only the talk text to speech, where you push the buttons and it says the words, but you can help them make decisions and have, 2 buttons on the screen of, do you want an apple or an orange, a bath or a shower? And that kind of helps, like, oh, I got control. I can choose what I want. Like, good. So there's a lot of techniques out there for parents that, even if you follow every single one by the book, it's still, you're not going to have an easy day, but it does get easier. And so the goal with the YouTube channel and creating pooling together the neurodivergent community is finding, what works for these kids. Like your son, he's grown up. He has his own son. He's out, doing he figured out how to get
How to live
in the world.
How to have a life. Yep.
And I'm from a family of entrepreneurs. So everybody in my family owns their own business. And by 3rd grade, I couldn't read. I wasn't autistic. Now we know I'm dyslexic, but they didn't diagnose it back then. And they basically, I kept getting headaches. So the school recommended that they homeschool me. And it's very seldom that public school recommends to homeschool a kid, but they can't teach you how to read. Like, we don't know what to do. You're always in pain and a headache. So like, just go home. So my parents said, Mimi, you can do 3 things in life. You can go to school, you can go to work, or you can stay home and clean the house. Like, these are the options that you have. As a male, staying home and cleaning the house might not be as possible. Yeah. So of course, as a 3rd grader, I picked I'll clean the house. It's the least amount of responsibility. But I did end up going into my parents' offices and my uncle's offices and my brothers and cousins workplaces. And a lot of times when kids don't fit the mold, they've got to figure out what works for them.
Right.
And autistic kids are extremely creative. And so harnessing that like interest-based learning and encouraging the kids to create in a space where they are, have that monomania of like obsession of like, I got to do this, I got to create this. Like maybe if we can help kids find kind of their purpose, and the thing that drives them to push through all of the hard things and go out there, talk to people, be social. I'm hoping to teach business skills in YouTube channel so kids can grow up with at least like practical life skills like banking, checking, investing, like things that most kids.
Cryptocurrency.
Okay.
There you go.
Relax.
There you have it.
Well, they're so smart. They'll probably be able to figure out how to do it in a minute. Alex, do you want to share a little bit about what's going on with one of your kids with the
Well,
testing?
my daughter is 9 and she's in 4th grade, and she just finished her neuropsych eval because I think she's dyslexic and has dysgraphia.
When will you know?
We find out on Thursday morning. We
There you
have the
go.
meeting with the doctor about what's going on with her. But my money is on mild dyslexia and moderate dysgraphia because she can't spell. Like, she can look at a word and write it and then spell it wrong. Like, the word can be right above it and her brain just spells phonetically. She's like, no, that doesn't follow the rules of spelling that I learned in 1st grade. So it has to be this way. So
Yeah, you have to teach kids how to spell, and then you have to unteach them and then reteach them advanced spelling at some point. It's very
'cause, like,
annoying.
all of
You're finding that so she's in a private school, and you're finding that the public school isn't offering much assistance. Is that right?
Well, the public
Alex?
school, if she were in the public school system, we would be able to get more help. And if her thing is her stuff isn't super severe. Like, she gets good grades other than on spelling tests. And our school's really teeny tiny. So her teachers are always like last year, her teacher just came up to me at the end of the year. I also work at the school. I'm a teaching aide in preschool and 2nd grade. But her teacher came up to me in the hallway and she's like, I just deleted her spelling grade. She's like, I don't want her to get discouraged. Like, she's a great student. She doesn't need to have that on there because it was like a D+ or something like that. And she's like, I know she's trying, and
She would hate
whatever.
that. That
And
would
she,
really
and
devastate
she's,
her.
firstborn girl, so she likes to have a lot of like outside encouragement and stuff like that. And so yeah, and we didn't really notice her spelling stuff until 2nd grade because kindergarten and 1st grade, everything's like phonetic.
Yeah, they spell
and,
badly
like,
in kindergarten.
simple.
It's like, yeah, that's a kindergartner for you.
And then 2nd grade is when all of the laugh is a spelling word, and she's
Yeah.
like LAF. Laugh. And they're like,
That's
no,
right.
actually not at all. And it was just like, no matter how many ways I tried to teach her to spell it, I was like, write it in the air with your finger. We'll do flashcards. We'll do songs. Like, she just could not remember how to spell these words. And I was like, clearly something's going on.
Yeah.
And so I tried to look through because they were like, you can get things through the public school, but she could get evaluated through the public school to have a learning difficulty,
Yeah.
which doesn't help that much, especially in her school. Like, they are aware and they're like, yeah, we know she has a difficulty in spelling. Like, so I was like, I don't need to go through all that.
Well, but there's a bunch of hoops that they make you, like, if you want extra, if you want like a helper in the classroom, you have to get a diagnosis through official means, and then it's...
And we don't do paras at our school. Like, kids leave our school to go to public school if they need a lot of assistance because we're a tiny little school that
and
just
ours
doesn't...
is like that too. It's like we don't have a bunch of people who can just pay attention to one kid.
Yeah, like a lot of kids will leave our school between kindergarten and 1st grade because they're like, oh, we actually realize that you need more help than we can provide you with this little... So we have 2 women that help with reading and math problems, and it's very not super intense reading and math problems. But yeah, so we had to do the pay out of pocket, no insurance covered neuropsych eval.
And it was very expensive, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very expensive. But I don't know. I'm excited to see what the results are. And and it's hard. It's tough because it's a neuropsych eval is really extensive. I mean, it's a 5-hour long test.
Yeah.
And for some people, like one of my son's best friends just had a neuropsych eval, and they found out that he's autistic, has ADHD, a tic disorder, dyslexia, and anxiety. And I'm like,
Jeez.
that, yes, is worth all the money to
Mm-hmm.
be like, you know, he needed to be tested for all sorts of different things and will need a lot of support in a lot of ways. Whereas our daughter, I was like, we don't need all of this, but this is what we have to do, I guess.
Well, I have a couple of points to make on that. So, Mama Mimi website is actually actively trying to solve that problem, because once you do have an IEP and you do have a diagnosis, parents shouldn't be afraid to diagnose their kids. All it is a label for the purposes of treatment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you do have that diagnosis, like I got my son this scholarship, right? There's a lot, and you can shop around. There's a lot of public and private money out there for all types of learning disabilities and conditions. So I'm working on a state-by-state directory where parents can just go and find immediate money, because when you have a kid that's special needs, people say, oh, that I'm sorry, nonprofits can offer you feel good advice or whatever, but like you need money to get these programs funded. So even though that out-of-pocket neuropsych evaluation was expensive, throughout her lifetime of education, you can probably get her more help. Now,
Yeah.
is a public school better than a private school? That's a question. So when you do have an IEP, the IDEA Act requires a free, appropriate public education, right? And so for your daughter, if she has, dyslexia and she needs extra help with that, then an extra tutor during the class, 1 hour or 2 hours or 3 hours a week would be considered a free and appropriate education. Therefore, the school must pay for that. So when you do have an IEP, if you're in public school, you can get the school to pay for occupational therapy, speech therapy. But will it be, 20 minutes of occupational therapy a quarter? Or will it be, 2-3 hours a week? And as a parent, you kind of need to advocate, and it's a little bit of an uphill battle, kind of like pulling teeth with the school, because they have, limited resources or however they want to spend their money. And you have to be like, no, my kid, needs the least restrictive environment. My kid, the IEDA Act says that I'm entitled to a free, appropriate education. These accommodations are appropriate. These tutors are appropriate. This is what, you helped me with, and your public school, this is my tax money, go do it, right? And so the hard thing is it's a lot of work. So like in Minnesota, there's a great nonprofit called Pacer that will actually look over IEP and kind of like help you work through that. There's a lot of resources out there to help parents get these things set up. And although it's a lot of work with the evaluation, once you have it, you can shop that around and you can use the money and the accommodations to help your daughter. Now, for dyslexia, at the bottom of my heart, I genuinely believe the cure has to do with sign language. And at Gallaudet, there was several interpreters who were also dyslexic, and they sort of gravitated towards the language. And the issue with dyslexia is like spatial orientation. So, for example, like letter D, you might see letter D like this, where it looks like a letter B or a letter P. And so when you do sign language, at first for me, it was twice as hard to learn, because it was really like, oh my God, my brain was like breaking, trying to figure out where everything goes in 4D. But because sign language is a 4D language and written language is 2D, it does something with your brain. And I've recently put my son in occupational therapy, and one of the big things is going across the midline, like looking left to right, which my son wouldn't do. But when you scan a room or you kind of look around,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to be able to rotate your head. So we took things like balls or even candy or anything he really wants and just kind of practice looking left to right. Now, when I was younger, they made me do these eye exercises where you watch your finger and you touch your nose or whatever. But those were like painstaking for me. It gave me a headache. I didn't like it. It was boring and I wasn't interested. But sign language was actually interesting because my neighbor knew it and she was hard of hearing. and we would go ambush our parents, and we could use it like, oh, do you see mom coming? Okay, hold on. Wait, 1 more minute. Okay, hold on. Ready, we're gonna jump. Okay, ready, go, and so for me as a kid, it wasn't like, oh, I have to like force my eyes to exercise. It's like, oh, I'm learning this sign language. I can tell a secret. I can say this right in front of my mom to my friend, and my mom doesn't know what I'm saying. Like, this is so cool. And so it naturally, so I ended up going to college at 15 because I was homeschooled, but my mom couldn't teach me sign language and she couldn't teach me algebra 2. And she just went, the community college was like, this is beyond me. Please help. So I enrolled in those 2 classes. And then when I was 16, I decided I'm going to go get a degree in sign language. So I was enrolled in 16 credits at 16 years old, but I still couldn't read. And there was no like Chat GPT. I had to use Dragon dictation. I had like accommodations in school. But my mom would literally read my college textbook to me, and I would record her voice and play it back because I couldn't read my textbook. But I'm like, I want to study sign language, and like reading is something I have to do to just get through the class. So like, I'm going to do it. And I was highly motivated. That's the interest-based learning, with autism or with kids who have learning disabilities, is like, it's 10 times harder. So you have to really want it in order to try. Right. And so then all of a sudden, once I was 2 years into sign language and became like semi-fluent, I think it takes about 5 years to get fluent. But in 2 years after that, I was able to read. And so when I was 19 years old, I was taking 700 level PhD classes, auditing classes, because you can take a full course load and then you can audit like 2 classes a semester for free if you're already full time. So, and I was reading these complicated books on neuroscience and understanding it, and my headaches reduced. And now I would consider myself a very strong reader, and because my eyes and also my depth perception or whatever I have 20/20 vision. I've tested my eyes 1,000 times because I'm like, what's wrong with my eyes? Why can't I read like this? But there's nothing wrong with my eyes. There's something wrong with my brain. And same with writing, like the word black. I know the word black is BLACK, but like 99% of the time I go to write it and it's BLCK, and I'm missing the letter A. And I'm like, this is like the signal from my brain to my hand. Like the printer signal has
you got a glitch.
Right. And I know how to spell it. So there's, the thing is, everybody's different, but how can you get accommodations and learn enough that you can do what you need to do in life? And that's the goal with the Mama Mimi vision, is to be like, how can we get people, you don't need to be like suffering because of whatever your diagnosis is. I mean, you can find ways to kind of make progress, right?
Sure.
Yeah, no question.
I love that.
That's the goal, and I hope that with that neuropsych eval, you can shop that around and get your daughter the accommodation. Maybe if it's not in school, it can be after school. Maybe there's an online a program for dyslexia. I've been looking into that, but I would take sign language if she could. Maybe you should put her onto the Mama Mimi website, but really. Practicing sign language with a class and with a teacher, like look at the letter C, like this, like that, like it looks totally different from,
Sure.
And so when I do my YouTube channel, some people would say I move too much. Like when I was at Gallaudet, they're like, I was interpreting, like you see that interpreter on the news, like in the little box, and they're like constrained, right? But I'm always moving and shifting, and I like to rotate to the side in my videos, which you usually don't see people doing, but me being like a dyslexic person, like that's what helped me learn, because things look very different. So it's the only 4D language that we have out there. And I think that it should just be taught to all children at a young age, because before your vocal box is developed, you can do sign language like milk, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
she
mine did all
she knew
that.
probably like 20 sign words before she started talking
Yeah,
because I
Ethan was
was
like that too.
yeah, she knew a bunch of words and like she learned them really really quickly. And she's always been very good. Like her fine motor has always been really incredible for her age. Like she taught herself how to tie her shoes when she was like 4.
Wow.
Put her hair in a ponytail at 3. Like and nobody ever taught her. She just saw somebody do it and was like, "Oh, okay."
Yep, I have
And
her untangle all my necklaces.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
so I could
cool.
actually see her really enjoying sign language. And that's really interesting that you say that because, yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, being bilingual is,
A great
it
thing.
makes your brain work in a different way.
Sure
But
does.
then sign language is even a step beyond that because if she couldn't think, how do I spell that with just print, she could think with her hands. And that's like another way for her to be able to process and do it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
So here's the hard thing is at Gallaudet, have you ever tried to like talk to yourself during a test? Like, oh, okay, what was it? That was like that.
Hmm.
Well, in
Yeah.
sign language, if you try to talk to yourself, that's cheating because
Yeah.
people can look at your
Oh,
hands,
yeah.
like know what you're saying. So I remember sitting there and being like, don't move your fingers. But I'm like, what's that word? And you feel the movement in your hands. Like, so like I said, it's a crazy way to have like muscle memory. So when you think of a word, you kind of feel like the phantom movement of your arms moving,
Yeah.
even though you're just thinking. So sometimes thinking can be physically exhausting. Just if I'm
Yeah.
thinking, when you really get fluent in a language, you can actually think in that language, not only just like, but when you first learn, you're like, more. Okay, more means more in English. Okay, like you translate it back to English,
Yep.
And once you start thinking in sign language, it's exhausting. I used to watch my roommates' dreams actually, because like, when people talk in their sleep, but she would sign in her sleep, So
Funny.
like,
Oh, funny.
yeah, there's actually I'll tell you about my first day of school at a deaf university. So I got sick during orientation, so I missed everything, and I moved in like 6 p.m. the day before school starts, right? So I come with my whole family, set up the dorm, whatever. I just meet this girl. We're sleeping in the same room. It's one room with no divider or anything. And she's like going to bed, and my parents didn't really let me have like sleepovers, so I was always used to being home. So first off, when you wake up somewhere that's not your house, it's a little different, right? Second, at the time, thanks to vitamins and supplements, I got off of Ambien, but I was taking Ambien and heavy sleeping pills from like 12 years old because I was so anxious
Oh.
and such a spaz. So the reason I really got into the longevity is because I was on so much sleeping pills, stimulants, just like medication to just try to get through the day with all of my ADD and OCD and dyslexia and this and that. And sure, you can help your brain, but there's long-term brain damage, your liver, your
Yep.
kidneys. Like these are not sustainable ways of life. But
No.
anyways, at the time I was on like sleeping pills, and we set our alarm at like 5:30 in the morning because it's the first day of school and we're 18-year-old girls like gonna get ready for school, right? So her thing is, deaf people have an alarm clock that vibrates, and I read about it in a book, right? Like it's they put it on their bed and it shakes their bed, and that's how they wake up. I had no clue how strong this vibration is. Like it's so strong. So it's 5:30 in the morning, and my roommate forgot to put it on her bed, so she put it on her desk right next to glass.
Oh, that's gonna be loud.
Like she had all these breakable glass pictures. So all of a sudden, I hear this really loud, like, and glass breaking everywhere. And
Good morning.
I took my sleeping pill late, so I'm already like half loopy, and I'm like, where are we? I'm not home, and I'm like, oh my god, like it's an earthquake, right? So I like freak out. Meanwhile, my deaf roommate is like sleeping like a adorable, like she doesn't even flinch because she can't hear anything. So I jump up and I'm like, oh my god, it's an earthquake. And then I look at the thing, it glows red and orange, and it had fallen behind the desk. And I just read the dorm safety about unplugging your computer so it doesn't start a fire, right? I see all this broken glass, and I'm like, oh my God, now there's a red light. It's a fire. This is the fire alarm. We gotta get off the building. So I'm like, my heart rate is at like 200. You know, I'm about to go grab the girl that I just met last night and be like, get up, it's a fire. I'm like 2 inches away from her face, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's her alarm clock, man. Like, oh, like I you know. And so then I gently tapped her on the shoulder, and I was like, hey, your alarm. And she opened one eye, like barely, and she flew across the room and boom, turned it off, because it sounds like that's something she's done before, or like forgot to put it on her bed, you know, like it's not. So it was really interesting to go to school amongst deaf people and just be totally immersed, you know, in that world.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people with a lot of coming from all walks of life, all different countries. And that's when I really learned, like, life is about, you know, living and thriving and finding happiness in, you know, whatever your kind of daily motions are, right?
Sure.
And the main goal with an IEP, if a kid is graduating an IEP through the public school system, is, you know, independence as an adult, right? And as a parent, you know, you want to try your best to help your kid be independent, but even if they're not, you want them to relate, you want them to connect, you want them to be happy, you know.
Right.
So
There it is.
Exactly.
One quick question before we have to go. It's actually
Yeah.
from my wife. She wants to know if you have ever reached out to Communication Junction, because that's the company that we use. We do, like, they teach sign language to like very young children starting at like 1 year old.
I haven't heard of them, but I'm going to note it down, because the goal of Mama Mimi is to connect everybody in one place. And I want to make it easy for parents to find resources like Communication Junction to immediately get help. Why wait? You know,
That's such a great idea.
It
Yeah, we've been
really
using them
is.
for like 3 years. So yeah, we're all about them.
Mimi, you got to come back once in a while. This has been great. I think a lot of people learned a lot of things, because most people probably don't, you know, have the same kind of life or whatever. Assume, well, it's not that. There's a lot going on here that I didn't know about, and our listeners didn't know about, and I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
And you need to come back soon.
okay, well, just let me know. And if listeners have any questions, they can reach out to you. They can reach out on mamamimi.com. We're in this together to try to make a wave of change. So thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. We'll
Thanks
talk
for
to you
coming
soon.
on.
Take care. Bye-bye.